If it wasn't for television, would Donald Trump be running for president? No.
Under the YouTube video of the announcement speech for Donald Trump's presidential campaign, the commenters are very excited. But history didn't change when Trump ran for office in 2015. History shifted long before that, in 2004.
Donald Trump was a bankrupt punchline in the New York tabloids, a guy who inherited a real estate empire from daddy and then managed to lose it all.
In 2004, Trump was chosen to host the reality TV show The Apprentice, where 16 contestants compete for a chance to work with him. At the time, Trump was something of a has-been. So, it wasn't surprising for a has-been to end up on reality TV. What shocked everyone was that the show was a massive hit. According to Trump himself, when it first went on, everybody said, "No way. Who's going to watch Trump on television? It's not going to work." And you know, it worked. And they want to renew me as long as I live, I guess. But it wasn't just Trump's life that changed in 2004. World history did too, because without The Apprentice, Trump would never have been a credible presidential candidate. I recently came across an excellent article in The New Yorker titled "How Mark Burnett Resurrected Donald Trump as an Icon of American Success." The question that haunts the journalist is it really possible that a reality TV show could create an American president out of thin air? And if so, why did it have to be Trump?
Many have asked, who is to blame for Donald Trump? And I'll tell you who, because he's sitting right there. That guy.
This man forcing a strained smile after being called out during the Emmy Awards is Mark Burnett. Burnett is a former British paratrooper who, in 1998, bought the rights to a Swedish reality TV show where 16 people have to survive on an island, renamed it Survivor, and turned it into a global phenomenon.
The Trump has spoken.
After Survivor, Burnett went on to create hits like Shark Tank and The Voice. But posterity will remember him for one casting decision, hiring a brash and eccentric real estate mogul to host his reality TV show, The Apprentice.
I'm going on the record right now. He's responsible. If Donald Trump gets elected and he builds that wall, the first person we're throwing over it is Mark Burnett. The tribe has spoken.
Survivor was a smash hit in the US, right from the very first season, with the final episode watched by 125 million people. So, as a savvy businessman, Burnett started brainstorming ways to replicate the formula. One day, while watching a BBC documentary about the rat race, he had a brilliant idea.
And thinking, well, you know, what if there'd be a show, kind of Survivor-ish, but it takes place in a city?
The pitch can be summed up in 3 sentences. Survivor in the city. Contestants competing for a corporate job. The urban jungle. Thursday evening became Burnett's primetime slot. Thursday at 8 p.m. Survivor. Thursday at 9 p.m. The Apprentice.
And suddenly, I do the top 5 shows, I think, on American TV, both on the Thursday night. I took some of my key Survivor team, broke them off, and had them become the Apprentice team.
Instead of surviving on an island, contestants compete relentlessly for their dream job, and every week, one of them gets fired.
Michael, yes, sir. You're fired.
Now, none of this explains how Trump ended up hosting the series for 14 seasons. Well, there are 2 versions going around. Version 1, Burnett was a visionary and recognized Trump's potential. Version 2, Trump was the only one willing to accept the role of host. The reality is somewhere in between. Trump may have been the only one to agree to the first season, but because of the ratings, the original plan, which was to change billionaires every season, was abandoned. Burnett clearly had a good instinct about Trump. He even went so far as describing him as his soulmate.
We have never had a single bad word between us. Everything that comes up in business, we just deal face to face. No lawyers, no accountants. Deal with it straightforwardly. It's been one of the greatest relationships of my life.
Patrick Keefe of The New Yorker explains how the producer charmed Trump to make sure he had him on board. In 2002, he rented a venue in Central Park to film the Survivor finale. The manager of the venue was Trump. "I need to show respect to Mr. Trump. I said, welcome everybody to Trump Woolman Skating Rink. The Trump Woolman Skating Rink is a fine facility built by Mr. Donald Trump. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Because the Trump Woolman Skating Rink is the place we are tonight, and we love being at the Trump Woolman Skating Rink. Mr. Trump, 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 Trump." As Burnett told the story, he had scarcely got off stage before Trump was shaking his hand, proclaiming, "You're a genius." It's an age-old persuasion tactic. In his 1936 classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie explains, "Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language." To further win Trump over, Burnett applies another principle, which can this time be found in Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power: never outshine the master. On interview tours with Trump, Burnett exhibited the studied instinct of a veteran producer. Anytime the spotlight strayed in his direction, he subtly redirected it at Trump. Trump liked to suggest that he and Burnett had come up with the show together. Burnett never corrected him. In some versions of this story, journalists want us to believe that Trump was a total loser who didn't have a single penny to his name and was the laughingstock of the entire United States. And it was Burnett who got him from the gutter and transformed him into a president. It seems to me that it's a media anti-Trump bias talking here, and that the real story is more subtle than that. Yes, Trump wouldn't have been president without The Apprentice, but The Apprentice probably wouldn't have been successful without Trump. Burnett needed him to make his show work because Trump combines 4 characteristics that are rarely found together. The host of The Apprentice needs to have succeeded in business. He must already be famous. He needs to have a strong personality and be able to deliver punchlines. And he needs to want to host a reality show. It's very rare to find a rich, famous businessman who is capable of hosting a reality show. Imagine Bill Gates trying to host something like this. Number 1, he wouldn't be willing to do it, and number 2, his image is too tame and it would be boring as hell. So why did Burnett choose Trump? It wasn't just a lucky break for the Donald. He had spent 20 years crafting the storytelling and persona that The Apprentice would need. Of course, he could never have predicted that a former British paratrooper would make a fortune by sending people to survive on desert islands, nor that his next show would take place in the urban jungle of New York. But life is full of such coincidences, and we can credit Trump for recognizing early the power of personal branding, a term that wouldn't even be coined until 1997, but which grew in importance with the rise of reality TV and then social networks. The more important question is, how did The Apprentice propel Trump to the presidency of the most powerful country in the world? It's pretty hard to know exactly what people thought about Trump in 2004 just before The Apprentice. I think a lot of people just invent memories. Looking back, they always knew that Trump was a failed businessman and a dangerous populist. For example, the New Yorker article portrays Trump before his casting as a washed-up clown who was the laughingstock of newspaper due to a series of bankruptcies. So I tried to find examples of media coverage about him from that time, and I came across this interview on the BBC. This interview dates back to 1998, years after his initial bankruptcies, but 6 years before The Apprentice. And Trump is not presented as a clown, he's presented as a guy who just made a successful comeback.
Rich, ruthless, and famous, my guest is a New York institution, known for the buildings he's built and the wives he's divorced. You don't want to cross him, though, because he likes getting even. And he's made it a rule that no one pushes him around, ever. So how did he lose all his money and then get it back again?
But anyway, it's clear that The Apprentice helped to reinforce the Trump legend in the minds of millions of Americans. The Trump mythology begins to take shape starting from the pilot of the series. When he delivers the opening lines, Trump is off screen. And he doesn't talk about himself, he talks about New York.
New York, my city, where the wheels of the global economy never stop turning. A concrete metropolis of unparalleled strength and purpose that drives the business world. Manhattan is a tough place. This island is the real jungle. If you're not careful, it can chew you up and spit you out. But if you work hard, you can really hit it big. And I mean really big.
The worldview underlying this clip is pretty brutal. Life is a zero-sum game, the world is a war of all against all, and only the best survive. They literally show a homeless guy. But in the context of the show, it perfectly aligns with the pitch. Survivor in the city. And Trump really gets that this is the point of the show, because he repeats the idea of the urban jungle in his very first words to the contestants.
Welcome to New York. I've always said, New York City is the real jungle. It's tougher in New York than any place in the world. You're going to find out what I mean.
On screen, we see images of the Statue of Liberty and Wall Street before we see Trump. The goal is to create an association between Trump and the greatness of New York. It's not the most subtle cinematic technique, but this is reality TV from the early 2000s, so don't expect Scorsese. When Trump finally appears on camera, he's sitting in a limousine. I thought he was going to try to sell me a dropshipping course. And just in case you didn't get the message that Trump equals New York, he tells you so himself.
My name's Donald Trump, and I'm the largest real estate developer in New York. I own buildings all over the place, model agencies, the Miss Universe pageant, jetliners, golf courses, casinos, and private resorts like Mar-a-Lago, one of the most spectacular estates anywhere in the world.
But of course, we're in 2004, so many viewers remember Trump's bankruptcies in the early 90s, and he needs to counter that objection.
But it wasn't always so easy. About 13 years ago, I was seriously in trouble. I was billions of dollars in debt. But I fought back and I won. Big league. I used my brain, I used my negotiating skills, and I worked it all out. Now my company's bigger than it ever was, it's stronger than it ever was, and I'm having more fun than I ever had. I've mastered the art of the deal and have turned the name Trump into the highest quality brand. And as the master, I want to pass along my knowledge to somebody else. I'm looking for The Apprentice.
This is the storytelling of the legendary comeback, and it should also remind you of the slogan from Trump's first campaign, Make America Great Again. What he promised Americans was a comeback for the entire country. Then take the title of the show, The Apprentice, because the dream job the contestants are fighting for is a chance to work alongside Trump himself.
Right now, from all over the country, 16 of America's best and brightest young entrepreneurs are arriving in New York for the chance to work as my apprentice and get a first-hand look into the world of big business.
The introductions of the contestants are written to be as impressive as possible for the average American.
They come from all walks of life. Some have their PhD or a Harvard MBA and have learned their skills in the classroom.
One of them is a Harvard graduate and another is a PhD student who has worked at the White House.
I'm Kwame Jackson. I'm 29 years old.
I have an MBA from the Harvard Business School and have worked as an investment manager for a major Wall Street firm.
My name is Omarosa Manigault-Starworth. I grew up in the projects, but I am now a PhD candidate and work as a political consultant. 4 years ago, I worked at the White House for the President of the United States.
The common thread among all these profiles is that they seem to idolize Trump.
The only person I really need to be concerned with liking me, ostracizing me, is Donald Trump.
Working for Trump is more than a big deal, it's a huge deal. Trump has certainly given everybody a shortcut to the American dream, but I'm gonna earn the American dream just like everybody else.
When I saw Trump today, just like it all came together right there. I want access to Trump. I want to get to know that guy.
Trump is presented as a kind of god with absolute power over the contestants.
This isn't a game, this is a 13-week job interview. Out of 215,000 job applicants, you're the 16 people that I chose to go through 13 weeks of hell to determine who's going to work for me at the end.
Cynics will say that it's all staged to create drama, and the contestants agree. Some of them, interviewed after Trump's election, say they were never fooled by the whole charade. For example, the Harvard graduate tells The New Yorker, Jackson was struck when the show aired by the extent to which Americans fell for the ruse. Main Street America saw all those glittery things, the helicopter and the gold-plated sinks, and saw the most successful person in the universe, he recalled. The people I knew in the world of high finance understood that it was all a joke. What the journalist calls a ruse is what Mark Burnett would simply call doing a good job as a reality TV producer. Because, if we put it simply, The Apprentice's big prize is to become an intern for Trump. The only way it makes sense is if Trump really is a mega genius. Similarly, in Survivor, we are shown people stranded on a desert island, but in fact, they're surrounded by cameramen. And in Shark Tank, even when a deal is made on screen, the money doesn't always change hands. In The Apprentice, Burnett uses the same tricks to present Trump as a business giant. According to IMDb, episode 11 of season 5 is the best episode in the history of The Apprentice. The contestants are split into two teams, men versus women. The women lost the previous challenge, and right from the start of the episode, we see them tearing each other apart.
No, I'm dealing with sneaky cunning girls.
Nene, there was something with you and Dion. What happened?
I hugged her goodbye, and then at the elevator, she said, "You are a coward."
When Trump announces their challenge to create works of art and sell them to raise as much money as possible for a charity, he slips in the usual passing remark to remind them how rich he is.
I have many, many wonderful pieces throughout various homes.
He also never misses an opportunity to remind them that he has famous friends.
Did LaToya create a tribute to her brother, my friend Michael?
Anything goes when it comes to winning. Michael Jackson's sister, who is part of the cast, doesn't hesitate to leverage her brother's death to quickly raise funds.
What I will do is do paintings that says, "I miss you, Michael, I love you," or something, and just show the sadness and the sorrow to touch the hearts of people.
Okay, I have a shirt of my brother's. It was only a couple of them made in the world.
And he passed before that shirt got out there. It's this shirt. And I'm willing to give this to Marley to help raise money because I know this is what he would have wanted.
There are some crazy scenes where a contestant completely loses it.
Okay! What's wrong? Mother!
The reason is absurd. Another contestant stole his paint.
The yellow paint is mine.
But in fact, nobody has stolen his paint. He had just forgotten to unpack one of his bags.
Take your spray paint.
Thank you very much.
Shut the up!
No, I can't.
Do your homework and get out of my face!
The craziest part is how one contestant describes this interaction to Trump at the end of the episode.
Because I look at these two men as iconic figures. One is a man who's done movies I've watched my entire life. The other's made music I've listened to my entire life. So I'm watching two titans go at it.
A clash between two iconic titans of the industry. To describe a meltdown over a tube of yellow paint, why not? Besides, the candidates have no artistic talent whatsoever, so it leads to this kind of awkward attempt. These examples clearly show that it's not easy for producers to create drama in a business series, so they resort to those cheap gimmicks. Like, this is the kind of stakes they're working with.
We have some issues here. The printer is offline. We have some serious issues and we need to make a decision.
The goal of The Apprentice wasn't to build an image of Trump as president. The goal was to get people to watch Survivor in the city. But for that to have any stakes, they needed to make Trump look super impressive. And it worked even better than expected. As you can imagine, Trump loved the image the producers gave him in the series, and he still draws inspiration from it in his political career. Check out this insane video from 2020. Trump announces his return to the White House after being in the hospital with COVID, and for that he uses the most dramatic helicopter shots you can imagine. The slow motion, the music, it's like the final scene of an 80s action movie. Long after the show ended, Trump instructed the crews filming him to shoot me like I'm shot on The Apprentice. In 2015, Trump announces he's running for President of the United States. His speech has a lot in common with the pilot for The Apprentice. Remember, the opening words of The Apprentice talk about Manhattan. Now listen to the first words of the speech where he announces his candidacy.
It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York.
In The Apprentice, Trump was telling us how he successfully rebranded himself.
I've mastered the art of the deal and have turned the name Trump into the highest quality brand.
In 2015, he uses the exact same term of brand, but this time for the United States.
We need somebody that can take the brand of the United States and make it great again.
In The Apprentice's pilot, everything is focused on Trump's wealth. When he announces his candidacy, he also relies on his wealth.
So the total is $8,737,540,000. Now, I'm not doing that to brag, because you know what? I don't have to brag. I don't have to, believe it or not. I'm doing that to say that that's the kind of thinking our country needs. We need that thinking. We have the opposite thinking. We have losers.
He argues that he's rich and therefore incorruptible. His money also gives him an incredible halo effect, because in the public's imagination, he feels that rich, he must be super smart. In fact, even when he wasn't a candidate, he spoke about the situation in the US by using the vocabulary of a businessman.
Our so-called allies are just ripping us off left and right with Japan and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. They're just ripping this country off. And I could tell you, if I ever was in office, which is unlikely because I don't think I want to be, but if I ever was, that would not happen.
Trump lists the qualities highlighted on The Apprentice and frames them as the essential ingredients of a successful president. I'm rich, so I'm incorruptible. I'm good at business, so I'll solve the US debt problem. I'm a great negotiator, so I can turn the country around.
So, I've watched the politicians. I've dealt with them all my life. If you can't make a good deal with a politician, then there's something wrong with you. You're certainly not very good. Our country needs a truly great leader. And we need a truly great leader now. We need a leader that wrote The Art of the Deal.
Throughout the show, Trump likes to demonstrate his power. There are dozens of compilations of Trump-minus moments where a contestant had the misfortune of challenging him and got fired on the spot.
Performance could have been better. Could have been better. It could have been a hell of a lot better. But look, I'm not a guy who's going to run around blaming people. So I'm going to take responsibility for that. So if you want to fire me, go right ahead.
All right, Gene,
But I think
you're fired.
Burnett also shares anecdotes about Trump's private life that go this way. For example, when he pitches the show to Trump, Trump says yes immediately, but asks him to call his agent. Problem, the agent hates the idea and tells Burnett he's going to tell Trump not to do the show. So Burnett goes back to Trump's office.
Mr. Trump stood up from behind his desk. He walked around and said, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't I just give you my word? Didn't I say we were making this? We are going to make it. We're going to make a deal right now, just you and me. He said, and by the way, Norma, get in touch with the agent and tell him you're fired.
According to Trump, this is exactly the kind of quality the public expects from a leader, an iron fist combined with a sense of honor. In episode 5 of season 11, one of the contestants tells Trump he's dropping out of the competition because his father is sick. Trump asks questions in a surprisingly empathetic way and concludes the interaction like this.
I think it's pretty bad.
And you had a very good relationship with your father?
Tell me, I play baseball.
Yeah.
So.
What's your charity, Jose?
BAT. It's a baseball assistance team, which basically it assists minor league players who have medical needs.
All right, I'm going to give $25,000 to your charity.
At the end of the same episode, one of the teams has raised nearly $1 million for a non-profit, so Trump offers to donate $14,000 to help the team reach an even million.
So here's what I'm doing, and this goes 100% to Marley's charity. I'm giving you $14,000, so you raised $1 million, okay? That's from me.
When you vote for a presidential candidate, you have to use your imagination. How would that guy react if provoked by a foreign leader? Is he good at negotiating to defend his country's interest? Does he keep his promises? In Trump's case, Americans didn't have to make that imaginative leap. They watched him negotiate for years and voted partly with these images in mind.
So I'm prepared. I love deals. You know, I wrote a book, The Art of the Deal. It's one of the biggest selling, maybe the biggest selling business book of all time. Some of you have read it.
Burnett himself helped build this vision of Trump as an uncompromising man. In 2004, he explained that Donald will say whatever Donald wants to say. He takes no prisoners. If you're Donald's friend, he will defend you all day long. If you're not, he's going to kill you. And that's very American. It's like the guy who built the West. Over the years, Trump was pretty ambivalent about the idea of running for president one day.
I'm not going to be running. The party is, as you know, self-destructing.
The President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Sounds good.
But he didn't need to be too explicit. Mark Burnett's work was paving the way for him. He went so far as telling a story that makes it seem like Trump agreed to do the show out of pure altruism. This is Donald Trump giving back, he told the Times in 2003. Then offered a vague invocation of post-9/11 civic duty. What makes the world a safe place right now? I think it's American dollars, which come from taxes, which come because of Donald Trump.
But this idea, The Apprentice, this could be really good to inspire lots of young Americans to get into business, to see how business really works.
In The Apprentice, Burnett's favorite shot of Trump is the low angle. You see him arriving from above, walking down the stairs. It's a shot that places him in a position of superiority to his audience. In his 2015 campaign announcement video, Trump also arrives in a low-angle shot. The same goes for his 2020 video, where he returns to the White House, a low-angle shot. Is Trump aware of the extent to which Burnett helped build his image? The answer is yes. After his election, Trump needs to organize his inauguration. And who does he immediately turn to? Burnett. Like a starlet who keeps returning to a favorite director, Trump had always loved the way that Burnett made him look. But being the president of the United States is not quite the same as being on reality TV. I don't know if you can tell by the way I speak, but I'm not American myself. And I have to say, it's pretty easy as an outsider to look at Trump as president and find yourself perplexed by the way he phrases certain things. Look how he announces the death of the leader of the Islamic State in 2019.
Baghdadi and the losers who worked for him, and losers they are. They had no idea what they were getting into. He died like a dog. He died like a coward. The world is now a much safer place. God bless America. Thank you.
Baghdadi and the losers who worked for him. It sounds like an episode of South Park.
This is the drone program. In there you can kill anyone on Earth remotely. Here's the keys. Thanks.
The comparison with his predecessor really hits hard.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
In the same Trump press conference, there is a very funny moment where Trump explains that he told the security services, "You guys are really nice to be killing terrorist leaders and all that, but I've never heard of these guys. Can you try to kill someone a little more famous next time?"
From the first day I came to office, and now we're getting close to 3 years, I would say, where's al-Baghdadi? I want al-Baghdadi. And we would kill terrorist leaders, but they were names I never heard of. They were names that weren't recognizable, and they weren't the big names. Some good ones, some important ones, but they weren't the big names.
If you assume that Trump learned a lot from The Apprentice, it's less surprising. The whole point of killing terrorists for Trump is to hold a press conference, but it works better if you give names people know. And it's here that the famous Churchill quote hits hard. "Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others." The American president is chosen by a popularity contest. People don't vote for a political program, they vote for a person. And so it makes sense that the person who is the most popular with the most people is the same one who can get good audience ratings on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. The only thing that was preventing democracy from turning into yet another reality TV show were the norms and traditions that demanded a certain level of class from a president. Trump managed to destroy these norms by creating an irresistible spectacle that journalists couldn't stop talking about. He made for good TV. In this clip, he's describing a contestant on The Apprentice, but he might as well be describing his own candidacy.
Gene Simmons was an unbelievable, wacky guy. And he was great television.
During the 2016 Republican primary, Trump came up with one punchline after another against opponents who seemed dull in comparison. So while Trump was a minor candidate with little chance of winning, the media covered him non-stop. Most of this media coverage was negative, but it gave him an exaggerated importance compared to his actual chance of winning at the time. In the same way, lots of media outlets presented Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate as public dangers capable of taking control of the minds of the youth worldwide, instead of what they actually are, which is pretty popular content creators. Ultimately, a large part of the rise of Trump, Peterson or Tate can be attributed to media panic, which brings them new fans and reinforces the loyalty of those who already follow them. And journalists know this, of course, but since it generates clicks and everyone's talking about it, no journalist can afford not to talk about them. So Trump's tendency to say stupid things, which would be a weakness for a traditional politician, actually works in his favor. Take, for example, his reaction to Kamala Harris's candidacy.
Look, we're not going to be a socialist nation. We're not going to have a socialist president, especially any female, especially any female, especially any female. Socialist president, we're not going to have it. We're not going to put up with it.
He sometimes made the same kind of remark on The Apprentice, for example here.
Additionally, women have a tougher time in the workplace, or so they say.
And here.
You dropped to your knees.
Yes.
And begged to do this.
It must be a pretty picture you drop into your knees.
By the way, it's really incredible that they left that in the final cut of a show on primetime television. Those were different times. The Apprentice team revealed that Trump often showed up unprepared. Trump was frequently unprepared for these sessions, with little grasp of who had performed well. Sometimes, a candidate distinguished herself during the contest, only to get fired on a whim by Trump. When this happened, the editors were often obliged to reverse engineer the episode, scouring hundreds of hours of footage to emphasize the few moments when the exemplary candidate might have slipped up, in an attempt to assemble an artificial version of history in which Trump's shoot-from-the-hip decision made sense. This was an incredible way to showcase Trump. The team didn't give him a script, so they let him do what he does best. Punchlines. Producers put in massive efforts to capture as many moments as possible to justify his decisions, so much so that Trump himself didn't understand at first why there were so many cameras on set.
My biggest surprise when we first started The Apprentice 5 years ago is how many people it takes to make it, because we have actually 32 cameras.
Then the team goes through hundreds of hours of footage to find moments that support Trump's instinct and decisions. This allows Burnett to claim that nothing is scripted.
Nothing's written whatsoever.
But in fact, a more accurate way to put it would be to say nothing is written before filming. The writing process definitely happens, but it takes place during editing.
We know each week who has been fired, and therefore you're editing in reverse.
When you have so many people working so hard to make you look like a genius, you eventually start believing it yourself. Trump feels like he can improvise and fire someone on a whim.
Clint, you're fired.
But that's because the show is edited to always prove him right. Trump probably didn't change his behavior too much between the show and his political career. As one New York Times journalist noted, the only difference, now there is no Mark Burnett to impose retroactive logic on the chaos. Only press secretaries, pundits and Mike Pence. No wonder he was obsessed for so long with the way he's been filmed in the series. He was allowed to be himself, and then he was presented with an edited, coherent version of his performance. That's probably why he makes open declarations of love to the cinematography and the production work on the show.
You saw the beautiful scenes. I mean, I think it's some of the greatest cinematography I've ever seen. And actually, I don't think Mark gets enough credit for the shots of New York. You can go anywhere in the world and you can see shots of any city in the world, and you won't see shots as beautiful and as professionally taken as those opening scenes of The Apprentice.
Many members of the Apprentice team ended up haunted by the impact of their work. By amplifying the mythology around Trump to make the show more interesting, they ended up giving him a kind of Jester's privilege. We saw him act like that for years. He was rewarded for it. His mistakes were erased. There is no reason for him to change now that he's a candidate or a president. They feel guilty that they helped him get elected. So they claim that they knew all along that Trump was a clown and that the show was supposed to be a parody. This is an oddly common refrain among people who were involved in The Apprentice, that the show was camp and that the image of Trump as an avatar of prosperity was delivered with a wink. According to some people who worked on the show, this kind of shot was supposed to be taken ironically.
Who will succeed, and who will fail, and who will be the apprentice?
But even the New Yorker journalist doubts this explanation. When I watched several dozen episodes of the show recently, I saw no hint of deliberate irony. And indeed, it looks like some people are trying to rewrite history. The team is mortified to have indirectly participated in Trump's election, so they are inventing ironic intentions in retrospect. Producer Burnett, on the other hand, has remained very close to Trump. And we can understand why. It must be convenient when your soulmate becomes president. The rest of the team are living in an absurd version of the Frankenstein story, where the doctor's team is haunted by his creation, but the doctor himself has fallen in love with this creature. During a conference, a fan asked Burnett what it felt like to be a producer. He replied like this.
Producers are also the least pats on the back, because you're the producer. Everyone hates the producer, right? So you're not the actor, you're not the director, you're not the writer, you're the producer. But without you, there's no idea. No one's gonna get the money. No one's gonna do the impossible.
Burnett did do the impossible. He turned a real estate developer into a TV star, and a TV star into the President of the United States.